Tonight, the oil and gas industry refusing to give up on its fight for drilling in the Great Australian Bight, and prisons in Port Augusta and Port Lincoln to go into lockdown as part of a statewide protest.
This is Southern Cross News with Abby Donaldson.
Good evening. The oil and gas industry is disappointed Port Lincoln Council no longer supports drilling in the Bight. They say the industry has a good safety record and will be a huge economic boost for the EP.
After months of meetings, presentations and debates, Port Lincoln Council has reached a position. They voted 5 votes to 4 to oppose drilling in the Great Australian Bight, weeks after a similar motion was defeated. It's left the peak oil and gas industry group disappointed.
Well, it's surprising that Council's changed its position just 2 weeks after voting against a similar motion.
Norwegian gas company Equinor is the latest in a line of companies since 2011, looking into drilling. Mr. Dorman says claims made about the industry don't match the facts.
We have a very long track record of safe, sustainable operations in Australia. We're very proud of that track record and we're very confident that will continue.
However, that's not enough to convince some councillors. Graham Mantell says accidents happen and the city's famed aquaculture industry needs protection.
Will be affected and could be devastatingly effective.
Mayor Bruce Green's casting vote had seen the previous motion defeated, but he says he'll advocate Council's position.
Was arrived at in a democratic way and a democratic process, and it's my role now as Mayor to propagate or persecute.
Mr. Dorman says the community will continue to be consulted.
We look forward to working with the community as these plans proceed.
In a statement, Equinor says it's consulted 120 different community organisations and will continue working around the Lower EP. John Hunt, Southern Cross News.
Prisons in Port Augusta and Port Lincoln will go into lockdown on Monday as part of a statewide protest against public service job cuts and privatisations in the state budget. Garth Burley has more.
Correctional workers across the state will walk off the job on Monday in response to the new state budget. The industrial action means that inmates in locations like Port Augusta, the state's largest prison, will be locked up in their cells to accommodate limited staffing. The Public Service Association announced the action would take place after the government confirmed nearly 3,000 full-time public service positions would be cut over 4 years, as well as the privatisation of the Adelaide Remand Centre.
We are trying to put pressure on the government to reverse some of their decisions.
Non-essential services in the prison, like training and education workshops, will be discontinued on Monday, while food and medical services will still apply. The Corrections Minister has said any incident will be on the head of the PSA, but they assure the public that safety of prisoners and staff is paramount.
Our members have undertaken lockdowns before. They're highly professional.
The Treasurer fired back today, saying the government accepts the right for employees to protest, but don't expect a day's wage.
If workers take time off, take the day off to go on protest and they won't be paid.
The Public Service Association members will be holding a barbecue in Port Augusta at Gladstone Square at 11 a.m. on Monday, while a mass rally is held in the Adelaide CBD.
The Broken Hill Airport was sent into chaos after one of its runway lights malfunctioned. All flights to the airport had to be diverted to Mildura on Sunday night, but Council insists safety was never compromised.
No lights, no flights. Airport staff had their Sunday night turned upside down when the runway lights suddenly went out.
We weren't really sure at the time what the problem was.
The malfunction was caused by a tripped circuit breaker which was later fixed first thing Monday morning. The airport was closed and all flights had to be diverted to Mildura. One regional express flight from Mildura, which left just after 6 o'clock, had to turn back. Rex said passengers were put on buses so they could get home that night.
It's not something that had happened before, so the guys weren't entirely sure what they were looking for.
But the problems weren't over, with the Royal Flying Doctor Service called out to an emergency evacuation in Wilcannia just before midnight.
Yeah, well, we've got sort of certainly emergency procedures that we use. So for any emergency that is required, we've got a backup plan.
Staff fired up flares across 2.5 kilometres of the runway so the RFDS plane could take off and eventually land in the early hours of Monday morning. Mr Ronkin says an outage like this is not something that happens every day, but it highlights why upgrades are desperately needed at the airport.
We've got a $21 million bid in at the moment to do lots of work and redevelopment at the Broken Hill Airport. Part one of that process is to get new lighting and fencing and some systems there, really around health and safety. That's our main focus.
Patrick Ryankey, Southern Cross News.
Works will begin shortly on repairing Port Augusta's heritage-listed town hall site over 30 years since it was last used. The repair works could be the start of something big for the CBD, with the developers also floating the idea of an adjacent hotel.
Port Augusta's town hall has been vacant for 35 years, but maybe not for much longer. Development plans are underway to transform the dilapidated site.
Yes, we have received a development application for the roof.
The last tenants of the land were the council in the early 1980s, and since then the building has been the topic of dispute between the state government and local council. However, the heritage-listed building was sold over 3 years ago to a developer in Adelaide, and they have extravagant plans for its future.
A vertical hotel for an art gallery, and then for a business hub.
The boxing club has now moved into the back half of the hall, and now work is underway to begin repair on the front facade.
Part of the issue in the stone movement has been that there's been water coming into the building for the last 25 years.
The local council says it would be great to see the town hall get good use after years of being inactive.
It's unfortunately a bit of an eyesore, but it shouldn't be an eyesore. It should be something that we're really quite proud of.
The roof is expected to be replaced between October and November, with planning on the hotel expected to be completed by the end of this year.
Having CBD vibrancy will be a really big thing moving forward. It's about how you then start to work with private owners, for example, to actually bring back a bit of life in the main street again.
Garth Burley, Southern Cross News.
Still to come tonight, why the Whyalla Men's Shed has been a hive of activity in recent weeks, and Broken Hill volunteers recognised for the wonderful work they do. Welcome back. The old library is set to receive $150,000 from the Port Pirie Council to give it a much-needed facelift. Structural cracks on the exterior of the building will need to be fixed before the space can be remodelled into the multi-million-dollar uni hub.
Once a library, now a gymnasium, and soon to be the new uni hub. Port Pirie's old library on Ellen Street has lived a long life and it's beginning to physically show.
It's a very old building and it has suffered over the years and we need to do some work on it.
The council is hoping to tenant the building in the best possible shape they can, which means quite a few renovations will need to be done.
We have issues with cracking in the walls, and the walls would need to be underpinned in certain areas to make sure that stops.
Along with replastering the walls, council will need to install a whole new air conditioning system.
The air conditioning is very old and really does not cater sufficiently for cooling the environment of the building.
Around $150,000 of work will have to be done to get the building up to scratch.
As the sporting precinct comes to completion, we'll be able to move gymnastics into that building. Once we've done that, then we can go in and do the necessary works.
The revamp is planned to be completed by February of 2019, just in time for students to come in for Uni Hub. Dominic Beaton, Southern Cross News.
Broken Hill has seen a drop in crime, according to recent findings from the Bureau of Crime Statistics and Research. While other categories continue to remain stable, two have seen substantial drops in recent months. Motor vehicle theft is down 56% in the Broken Hill area, while fraud is down 34%. Police have thanked locals for their continued support when it comes to tackling crime. The Whyalla Men's Shed has been a hive of activity in recent weeks. It's constructed new lids for bee boxes, helping a new honey-making business that's just started up.
The Whyalla Men's Shed is always buzzing with activities and projects to help the local community. Their latest project is helping give a local business some wings. They've helped construct bee boxes for a new honey-making business starting up in Whyalla.
Gives them something to do, which is important, and no, we're really chuffed.
They're expensive to buy, but with the men's shed it wasn't so expensive. Yeah, it's been good.
The boxes will contain frames around which colonies will create their honeycombs. Sean's passion for bees began as a child when his grandfather kept them. He's looking to create his own honey using these boxes, while also helping strengthening the declining bee population. There's been a worldwide decline in bee numbers, which could have a catastrophic impact if it's not addressed.
Yep, bees pollinate, flowers, yeah. All your fruit trees, without bees, we've been straight off, mate.
Malcolm says they're just happy to help those looking to make a difference.
We decided that probably a good project and a promotion for the shed, and we've been very pleased to be able to do it.
Sean says the finished product is the bee's knees. He now moves on to the next stage, which is getting the bees pollinating. While the region isn't known as a honey-making area, he's ready to have a go.
The beauty about bee boxes is you can move them. You can move them to other locations where there is blossom.
John Hunt, Southern Cross News.
Students at John Pirrie Secondary School have shown off their creative flair at their annual arts festival. The festival celebrates all things creative, including painting, photography, drama and live music.
So leading up to Festival of the Arts, we open up our John Pirrie Secondary School Art Prize, where students can enter a 2D or 3D original artwork to go in the running to win $350.
Year 11 student Lauren took out the first prize with a portrait she created using spray paint. The Broken Hill community has thanked its strong team of volunteers at a special awards night. Even though they don't do it for praise, organisers say it's a time to shine a light on the wonderful work they do.
They're the hidden gems of any local community.
It's our way of recognising what the volunteers of Broken Hill contribute to the community.
The annual Volunteer Awards were held last night with a number of categories presented to both individuals and groups. Among the winners were Charmaine Collins and the South Broken Hill Rotary in Community, while the team for the Broken Hill Heritage Festival won the event category.
Well, they certainly don't do it for the award. It's not. I don't believe there's any sort of a competitive culture as far as volunteering. People get all sorts of benefits out of volunteering.
And for his tireless volunteer work for sport in Broken Hill, Dennis Watts was inducted into the Nydia Eads Volunteer Hall of Fame. Dennis has been secretary of the local cricket league for 24 years, as well as umpiring games, supporting junior cricket and much more. His work for local footy has also been recognised with a life membership in 2015.
He's certainly been dedicated to supporting behind the scenes young people's sporting, particularly cricket, and that's for a very long time. You know, close to 40 years really. So it's very long term, and I think everyone who has commented to me about the award thinks it's a very, very good choice.
Marion says without volunteers, Broken Hill wouldn't be where it is today.
You know, the thought of an award at the end of it is not one of them, but I think it is nice for them when they do get an award. They're always very appreciative and, you know, very grateful.
Patrick Ryanke, Southern Cross News.
What a lovely story. Stay with us after the break. We'll have fish and tips, and in the weather,
it's going to be a warm start to early next week. I'll have all the local weather details soon.
Welcome back. Now it's time to see what's biting around the Gulf. Here's fish and tips.
Welcome another week around the Gulf Fishing Tips in Port Pirie. As much as it pains me to tell you, I have to send you away a little bit. Port Hughes at the moment has the biggest King George whiting. If I was going to give you a tip, it'd be along the blue line, try along there. You come a little bit further north into Port Broughton, there is a few King George whiting, but you'll have to deal with probably 4 times as many fish as you want to keep to get yourself a quota. When we come round to Port Pirie, we've seen a few musical whiting happening, but there's some salmon, trout, and you will get a good sized snapper still at the creeks.
G'day and welcome to this week's Fishing Tips from Port Augusta, Jewel North. Well, there has been a big school of kingfish up here. They haven't been really prevalent, but there is a big school that's been spotted anywhere from basically north of the train bridge down to around the powerhouse. But just also remember you've got that reserve at the top end of the Gulf. There are some crabs around, try a little bit deeper, and the tip I usually give there, old Clemmy's tip, was put your nets in for about 10 minutes before the first pull, and then they'll start to come on the bite then. There are some snapper down around the Seabird and also the Tyre Reef, some garfish out along the middle banks, and also if you do get a calm night, try dabbing as well. That's all we have from the Jewel North.
Hi, Whalers fishing report this week. There has been a few legal sized snapper coming out from the Cowlitz Landing and Menini grounds. Hot tip is to fish around the 10 metres of water, that's where the fish have been coming from. Out towards the Yarraville Shoal in the deeper grounds, there's been a few fish coming from those grounds as well. Along Whyalla, the coastline, there's been some nice sized squid coming from Mount Young. Just drift along those grounds and work the weedy patches. And from Point Lowly, there's been a few nice sized yellowtail kingfish sighted around the lighthouse area, so get in amongst those guys.
And time now for the weather with Amy.
Thanks, Abby. A mostly fine day around the region today. 21 for Port Augusta, 19 in Whyalla and Port Pirie. Meanwhile, a few showers were predicted around Port Lincoln today, a maximum of 15 degrees there. On the satellite, and cloud and a weak trough is causing only patchy light rain and some storms, mainly in the west. Skies are clearer in the far west and far northeast. If you're heading out on the waters tomorrow to kickstart the weekend, northerly winds will shift northwesterly between 10 to 15 knots. Seas will reach 2 metres, while sunrise is at 6:32. It's setting at 4 minutes past 6. A mostly sunny start to the weekend tomorrow, a high of 19 for Port Augusta. Cloudy in Port Lincoln with a high of 16 degrees, while it'll be a mostly sunny 17 in Broken Hill. Temperatures will be warming up early next week, a sunny 23 forecast for Port Lincoln. Cleve will see a high of 26 degrees early next week, while Woodnut will hit 28 to start the new working week. Maximums will be pushing up towards the high 20s in Whyalla over the weekend and leading into Monday. Port Augusta will reach 30 degrees for the first time in a while, and Kadina won't be as warm, however a sunny 23 is predicted for Monday. Temperatures sitting in the 20s over the weekend and next week in Port Pirie. 23 is the expected top for Clare early next week after 18 degrees on Sunday. And sunny spring conditions and maximums in the low to mid 20s predicted for Broken Hill. So Abby, spring has well and truly arrived around the region.
Thanks, Amy. It certainly has. I'm just hopeful for some more rain soon. And that's the local news from the team this Thursday. I'm Abby Donaldson. I'll have updates later. Until then, enjoy your evening. Good night.